Thank you, everyone, and welcome to our next episode of our CRE Unplugged collaboration series with none other than Brad Hargreaves, editor-in-chief of Thesis Driven. I'm your CRE Unplugged co-host, Nadine, and I am joined with Ryan Elazari. Hey, guys, how's it going?
Hey, it's good. Excited to be here.
Thanks for joining us, Brad. We weren't sure if you'd be back.
Thought about it. I'm back. I'm excited to be here.
All right, great. We're glad we didn't scare you off. All right. Great first episode of our collaboration series. And here we are, episode number 2. And we already have a follow-up development with one of our topics that we discussed in our first episode. New York City congestion pricing is coming after by the Trump administration. So the plan now faces fierce pushback from the Trump administration. And a February 20th letter to Governor Kathy Holcomb, U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy withdrew federal approval for New York City's congestion pricing, calling it a slap in the face of working class Americans, claiming it seemed designed more for revenue than traffic relief. He also claims it exceeded the power and authority granted to New York City by Congress. President Trump has demanded that New York City shut down the cameras by March 21st. Hochul administration immediately responded with litigation in response. I think my favorite part of the story is within an hour of the letter being sent to Governor Duffy, Trump went to social media, posted a fake time cover of himself as a king with a crown, and posted, "Congestion pricing is dead. Manhattan and New York is saved. Long live the king." My question to you, gentlemen, is what are your thoughts now based on this development? And also, what is it like living in your new monarchy?
So, I mean, we all knew this was coming. That was one of Trump's campaign promises, was to kill congestion pricing. I think, the results of it so far seem to have exceeded even the most bullish expectations of, congestion going down, crossing times, tunnels going down. But, Broadway ticket sales are up, restaurant sales are up. It's been good for the economy in ways that I think, even the boosters were like, I don't really know. So it's not surprising Trump, is coming after it. I think it's best to look at this kind of in the context of a bunch of things Trump is doing that are going to be tied up in litigation for a long time. The difference between this and, say, USAID is that it is default on, versus USAID, they could just stop the payments and everybody has to figure out a way to get home.
Right.
It's obviously, I'm not a lawyer. I don't, have a strong opinion on Trump's ability to do this. The best interpretation I've heard is it's a permit. The federal government issued a permit to the city to run congestion pricing, or permit to the MTA specifically. And once a permit is granted, they can't just pull that permit. So it's like building a house. You go to the city, you apply for a permit to build a house, you get that permit, you start building the house, a new mayor comes in, the new mayor can't just decide, well, I disagree with that permit, we're going to pull that permit. If you're halfway through construction of your house, you could sue the city and you would win if they pull that permit. So my understanding is it's kind of like that. And the city has a good case to keep it going. But obviously this is not what anyone wanted at this point.
Right.
I think the way that Trump went about this was not the best route to take. Maybe
Shocking.
He could have. Yeah, well, he could have talked to Governor Hochul, but I have some thoughts here. So yes, the numbers look great. 48.8 million was generated in the month of January. You had Queensboro Bridge was 30% faster. We had the Williamsburg Bridge, same 30% faster. Holland Tunnel, 48% faster. But as I said in the last episode, these were similar data to what was happening in London, and still London and that was in 2003, and now London is still the slowest place to drive. So Will this continue? I don't really see that happening because eventually people are going to get frustrated by public transit and then they might want to start getting back in their cars. Some other thoughts that I now have is, okay, what are the MTA going to really do with this money? Like,
Yeah.
how can we keep them accountable? Because that's the main thing. There's no accountability with the MTA. And you've had and Brad, I know you've dealt with this before, signal problems. Every time I get into a subway, most of the time there's signal problems because they were built back in the 1930s and they haven't been updated. Elevators, with me having two kids, it's very, some stations don't even have elevators for you to take a stroller or handicapped people to get down. Will they create more elevators? And will they expand on the Second Avenue subway? I mean, if they told me right now there was a specific plan for them to cover those three items, then yes, let's keep going for it. Let use that to combat what Trump is trying to do.
Right. I 100% agree. I mean, my support of congestion pricing is not an endorsement of the MTA's use of money, which I think it's hard to endorse the MTA's use of money. I mean, my favorite example is people were looking at, well, why is the Second Avenue subway so expensive? Why are these stations so expensive to build? We're spending billions of dollars on each station on the Second Avenue subway. Well, the way they were going about designing these things is each department of the MTA basically got a veto right over the design, and what they would ask for to get their approval would be a nice, luxurious underground office. So, in a city with a glut of office space, they were bloating the designs of these stations to build out tens of thousands of square feet of office space. And anyone who's done construction knows that the most expensive space you can buy is underground. It's very expensive to excavate underground. It's
Hmm.
why, parking requirements in LA just like drive up the cost of housing there because they got to dig underground to build the
Hmm.
second, the third layer sometimes of level of parking. So they were building these extravagant offices in the stations for their own staff.
Mm.
It just total waste, total bloat. And I was frankly before Trump issued this his executive order, I was excited to say, all right, I'm not defending congestion pricing anymore. That's a settled issue. Let's think about how we're spending this money. I mean, that's done. It's done. We're
Yeah.
getting the money. How are we spending it in good ways? And I unfortunately believe that now that it's been thrown back into existential question, all of the activists are back in, support mode, not in, policing and watchdog mode. And I think that's a mistake. I mean, some of them are not, particularly good at being watchdogs to begin with, but I think some of us are. And I think the MTA's feet need to be held to the fire here because they've not been good stewards of capital. And if I were to put Doge and Elon Musk on anything, it would be the MTA.
Good point. Yeah.
50 million, almost $50 million in 30 days is not a small sum of money. Has there been any talk of any reform to the MTA before the Trump executive order?
No, is the short answer.
Yeah.
It's going to require a tremendous level. I mean, there's ways you can shave a few dollars off here, off there, but
Yeah.
you fundamentally need, contracting reform, and you need reform of some of the union contracts that are in place and the way they do collective bargaining, which is governed by something called the Triborough Amendment
Hmm.
from many, many decades ago. And it basically prohibits the MTA from really properly negotiating labor contracts with the unions, with Transport Workers Union, the other unions that are involved, and it's it leads to a lot of the grift that we have here. So it's I'm not anti-union, I'm not anti-labor, but there has to be a level playing field, and I don't believe there is in the MTA and public transit right now, and it's leading to the public getting fleeced.
Yeah. which is very unfortunate, and it's not unique to New York City, but given the size and scope and breadth of New York City, I think the numbers are going to be much more staggering in New York City. How this plays out legally, we'll see. That being said, I don't think it's a slam dunk for the Trump administration, given the fact that New York is going to have all of these statistics from the NTA showing the positive effects in but 30 days so far, and also the argument that the Trump administration is making with, like, the undue burden on the working class. That's not new. That's already been litigated over and over again, over the last 3 to 4 years in court. So we'll see how this plays out. I wouldn't be surprised if the congestion pricing holds, and hopefully New York City can then look forward, as you guys have stated, see how we're going to use this money effectively. So anything else, you guys? Any closing thoughts? Words of wisdom to the MTA?
One closing thought is, the South Bronx is getting affected by this. You're seeing a lot of drivers now. They're circumventing the GW Bridge and the Cross Bronx Expressway, and there was already a lot of pollution and traffic in those areas. So, I would like to see the MTA trying to figure out ways to combat that, maybe creating a zone there, because you want to make it more safe for people who are living out there. And I think if you're not fixing that problem, then what's really the point of doing all of this?
100% agree. I mean, you don't want to just move the pollution somewhere else. And I mean, there's some great proposals on the table. The Fordham Avenue busway, for instance, that would reduce pollution in the Bronx, still on the table. And the Adams administration hasn't moved forward with it yet.
We'll be keeping an eye on this one. Who knows where we'll be the next time we record this episode. So stay tuned. Yeah. So speaking of permits, Brad, you were talking about, the government trying to pull the permit back from New York City. Let's shift our focus over to a town right across the Charles River from where I live in Boston, Cambridge, Massachusetts, most often mentioned for either Harvard or MIT, took historic action on February 10th. City Council voting 8-1 to eliminate single-family only housing zoning, often dubbed exclusionary zoning, making it one of the most aggressive housing reforms in modern U.S. history. The changes move to remove a number of barriers to housing development. These include a minimum 4-story buildings to be built as of right, meaning a special permit will not be needed to be granted in all residential areas, with an additional 2-story bonus for buildings where 20% of the building units are designated as affordable. Setback rules have been removed. No more parking minimums or complex density restrictions. Supporters in favor of this are citing 15-year projections where before the housing reforms, projections were showing 350 new units to be constructed by 2040. Now, with the new reforms, we're looking at anywhere between projections of 3,500 and 4,800 new units to be constructed in the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts. You still have your NIMBY opponents against it that are fighting concern about rapid development and the loss of character within Cambridge as well. Cambridge is now joining other U.S. cities such as Minneapolis and Charlotte that are taking aggressive moves to try to combat the serious issue of affordable housing we have in the United States. Gentlemen, could Cambridge become a national model for urban density?
Certainly, I think what they did was incredibly ambitious and smart, and they didn't just raise the height limits. They also revoked the setback requirements. Setback requirements basically say your building has to be 10, 15 feet back from the sidewalk. If there is any kind of urban policy that has really fallen out of favor among people who really study these things, is probably setback requirements. And people now broadly share the view that they make cities worse, not better. You walk down a nice street and that was built in the 19th century, early 20th century, and what do you see? Like, the buildings are directly abutting the sidewalk, versus a lot of new build with setback requirements, they're 15 feet off. So that 15 feet can turn into more housing. And that's what Cambridge is doing. They're also revoking parking minimums across the city, which makes total sense. Let developers decide how much parking they want to build. Don't mandate that. So I think it's super smart. Obviously, Cambridge is not a big city. It's an influential city. It is the home of Harvard, of MIT. There's obviously a lot of demand to live in Cambridge. A lot of students. So is it going to be? Is it going to print housing the way Jersey City has, shouldered the burden of housing for New York City over the past, 10 years? I don't think so. It's just too small of a mark, too small of a place to do that. But it is a great model, and it's awesome to see particularly progressive cities do this kind of thing. It's a good indicator. It's a good signal.
Good. Yeah, yeah. And I think conversations around this started maybe about 4 years back in 2021. So I'm no master planner, I'm no urbanist, but that seems like a pretty respectable timeline, in my opinion. Granted, it is a smaller city, and as you said, Brad, but 4 years to pass, progressive housing reform like this, I think is no feat. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
I think this is a step in the right direction. We're always talking about affordability crises at big cities, and this kind of solves there. My main question is, so what needs to happen is now developers will need to purchase the single family home, demo that home, and then build from there. And then on top of that, you have inclusionary zoning where 50 to 80% of the median income will, if you build above 5,000 square feet, will need to be inclusionary zoning. Is that enough incentive for these developers to build there? That I think ultimately is the main question. And I think if there is enough incentive, then great. We're going to be able to build more homes. But I do know that they had other plans, such as a 6-story plan and a 3-story plus 3 plan that got rejected. So this was a compromise. I just wish if they were going to agree to this type of zoning change, if they just went to the highest level. But again, it's a good start, and hopefully it'll create more housing in other areas in the Boston sector. Nadine, I'm sure you have some experience with that.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So, I live in the city of Boston, and the city, I'm always having conversations with developers in Boston, and they're usually in a bar, and it's not before the developer looks over both shoulders to make sure there's nobody in the bar that they know who's going to overhear what we're about to say. They're about to say, seriously,
Right.
seriously. But, the Wu administration has not made it easier for developers to build in Boston. And Boston, unlike no other, unlike a lot of the other larger cities in the United States, has a serious affordable housing issue. I mean, so Kendall Square, which is in Cambridge now, I'm just going to quote, you've got 2 bedrooms going for about $4,700. An average 1 bedroom in the city of Boston is maybe somewhere around 2,850 right now, 2,900. The Wu administration came in, and in an effort to kind of combat decades of cronyism and behind closed door negotiations that went on in Boston, which are a problem in and of themselves, pretty much swung the pendulum entirely in the other direction, which is not uncommon for progressive politicians such as Mayor Michelle Wu, shut any conversations with developers, and then tacked on a new affordable housing requirement on any new construction that's supposed to go up in Boston. So in theory and ideology, that sounds great. But when you couple that during a time with high interest rates, right, the math just isn't working. And, and she sold this to the public saying, hey, we're just going to go after the deep pockets of the developers, right? Make them, pick up the brunt of the cost of affordable housing. And you guys know if the math doesn't work, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get a project financed. And she is not listening. She's actually just starting recently to start to listen to some developers, but frankly, and I'm going to get a lot of shit for this, but I think it's just for show. We're in an election year this year. Interestingly enough, she now has an opponent. Josh Kraft has thrown his hat in the ring, moderate Democrat, son, if that name sounds familiar, son of Robert Kraft. Head of the owner of the the New England Patriots. Sorry, guys. Sorry, New England Patriots. So, I don't know. We'll see. But and he's saying the right things, right? Interestingly, his platform, he's running on rent control. So did Michelle Wu, and that didn't go anywhere. But he is saying that he wants to roll back the affordable housing requirements that she has put on new development. Right message. Is he the right guy to deliver that message? I don't know. I don't know if Boston's going to take kindly to a billionaire, given what's going on in the landscape on the national scale right now. And also, the guy hasn't even lived in the city of Boston. He just moved there a year and a half ago when he bought a $2 million condo in the North End. So he's never even voted in a mayoral race himself. So it will be interesting to see how that one plays out. But we're already seeing developments lost in the city of Boston heading across the river to Cambridge and Somerville. So it'll be really interesting to see what this new zoning in Cambridge does as well. So I won't be surprised if we'll see more development pop up over there instead of in the city of Boston. So
Fingers
that's
crossed.
Fingers crossed.
exactly. Exactly. So that's my take. People can come after me if they want. Speaking of shitty mayors, is it just me, or do we see a growing trend in the United States with shitty mayors in major U.S. cities? I don't know. We got Brandon Robinson in Chicago. The guy's pulling in a whopping 14%. Newsweek last week, I think, posed the question, is he the most unpopular politician in America right now? You guys would have your guy, Eric Adams. I don't know what the hell is going on with Eric Adams. Karen Bass in LA is not too favored with her people as well. So, guys, what's going on? Is it just becoming harder to be a mayor in a major U.S. cities these days, or are we just seeing a decline in quality candidates?
You,
I think we're seeing a decline in quality candidates. With Karen Bass, I mean, she shut down a affordable project that would have produced 1440 affordable housing projects, and that could have been gone through fast tracking. So she shut that down, and then there was another affordable project in the marina. Didn't let that go through. I have no idea why. I mean, these were just projects that could have just helped with a lot of the affordability crisis that they're dealing with in LA. I mean, it's like number one on the list. And then Ed Gainey in Pittsburgh, he's been talking about he doesn't want their residents to get displaced. He wants to have inclusionary zoning for all the developments. And he doesn't have like a plan for that. He's just saying that I want any development needs to be inclusionary zoning. So that could cause a lot of problems because you have Cleveland that's just up the road, and they're ripe for development. They're encouraging development, so developers and investors can just go there. So I think they need to be a little bit more careful about what they're trying to address here.
yeah, I agree. I mean, first of all, it's kind of wild to see like Rust Belt cities with declining populations adopt housing policies designed for, tech boom San Francisco and, New York. I don't think that's going to work the way they think it's going to work. But yeah, it's wild. I mean, Nadine, I think you're spot on, and I have to agree that it's a decline in quality versus the job of mayor getting harder. But I was asking myself the other day, like, how far the list down of metro areas do you have to go before you find a city with a mayor that's not a total disaster?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think I got to Houston. I had never heard of the guy. And I was like, I guess he's all right if I've never heard of him. It looks like a
Yeah.
moderate Democrat of some sort. But like, yeah, it's Chicago. I mean, you have Brandon Johnson, who's just signed this deal to sell out the city. It'd take an $830 million bond deal to basically give a giant package to the teachers union. And of course, he conveniently said that we're not paying interest or principal on this until after his term ends.
Oh, that's
So,
convenient.
yeah, future generations of
Sure.
Chicagoans can
Yeah.
can pay this thing. And so the city was already not doing well financially. The state is obviously a dumpster fire.
Right.
So, I would say, that this is, if you're in Chicago, I would think hard about what kind of property tax burden you're going to see in the future, except it's entirely possible that they'll get a federal bailout on from some future Democratic administration. So I don't know. It's a weird situation right now. Eric Adams, obviously, he's a moderate in a lot of ways. He is very good on housing. That I will
Yes.
give Eric Adams credit for. The city of yes, it was watered down by the time it got passed, but Eric Adams pushed for a big bill, and he got the biggest bill I think he could have gotten in terms of rolling back most parking mandates, lifting the FAR cap, doing things that just like need to be done are obvious. But honestly, the New York City Council is not the best at doing the obvious things sometimes. So he did get that done, but he also took bribes from the Turkish government. So like, who's to say whether he's net on net good or bad? But he's certainly a kook, that's for sure.
Yeah. I think not unlike on the national scale, I think the ideological pendulum has swung too far to the left. I think we're in dire need of a moderate politician who can come in and not only be able to be compassionate enough to be in touch with their voters, right, on certain issues, but also have enough of an economic wherewithal to understand the issues and to be able to make the right decisions. And honestly, to not be able to thinking of the role as a stepping stone, to some other national level or whatnot. We know that local politics is just as important, if not more important, than national politics. So I get pretty pissed off, when I'm reading about these shitty mayors. And I couldn't help but think about, I don't know if you guys watched The Wire, when Cicchetti was running, right? And, in the last season, and he was like, I'm going to go in, and he started filling the potholes and, making sure that service calls were made on time. And people just want a mayor. They want to see that somebody's taking care of them on a day-to-day basis. But sure
They want
enough,
things to work.
right? You just
They
want
want
things
things
to
to work.
work. Can we just get people in there that just, want things to work and surround themselves with people who know how to make them work, right? You don't necessarily have to know how to do it yourself. So I don't know. I got my eye out on Dan Laurie out in San Francisco, succeeded London Breed, although he essentially bought the mayoral race. His mother contributed $1 million to the race. He's an heir of the Levi Strauss fortune. So we'll see. I don't know. But he's another philanthropist like Josh Kraft. So I don't know. We'll see, guys. We'll see.
Nadine, can I just give you some stats here that I was perusing at? So
Bring it.
most popular destination for 25 plus college educated movers. Denver is now tied with Chicago and Los Angeles at 2.4%.
I'm not surprised to hear
So,
that.
that was really interesting. And Boston is eighth at 2.2%.
A lot of
So
students, so
So
many
you're
students.
so you're seeing a lot of college educated millennials or Gen Zers who are moving in not as populated areas that we've seen in the past, which I find interesting.
I'd be interested to see the out migration stats on a town like Boston as well. They're coming, for their undergraduate and graduate studies, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of them leaving when they're done, given the cost of, at least in a city like Boston right now. But I'm not surprised to see that number in Denver.
Yeah, Denver is very high on development, so I think they're definitely getting a lot of the benefits of that.
I think it'd
Denver's
be too
cool.
sunny. Yeah, I think it'd be too sunny for me though. Too much sun. I need a gray day every now and
You're
then. When
not
I
a
get
skier, right?
No, no, I never learned how to ski. I know. I I
Man.
mean, I feel like the après ski life would get a little old for me after
I,
a while.
I learned to ski at 28. I learned to ski. I
Did
first
you?
skied at 28. Yeah, I'm terrible at it, but
Okay.
I'll throw myself down the hill.
I
I
learned at
actually
32.
did you?
There
Okay.
you
All right.
go.
I by next winter I'll be 44. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to ski
Go
at
for it.
44. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. I got no shame being on the bunny slopes with the little ones. Dog. Yeah. All right. All right, guys, tune in for this time next year to see if Nadine has learned how to ski at the age of 44. I think that is a great time for us to take a little break. We're going to bring on David Abrams, co-founder and CEO of our sponsor, HILO, to see what's going on with David and HILO these days. So let's listen in. And I am so happy to introduce David Abrams. David Abrams is the co-founder and CEO of HILO, our wonderful sponsor of CRE Unplugged. David, welcome to our episode. Let us know what is going on in your world today. What's exciting you? What are you hearing? And what can we look forward to next from you?
Okay, well, so first of all, it's great to connect. Great to see both you, Nadine, and Ryan. Always a pleasure and glad to be a part of this and to support your efforts. So it's been an amazing few weeks. Obviously, I would be remiss if I did not make mention of the CBRE Industrious transaction. It's a bit of a blockbuster, not only in terms of size of deal, but what it signals to the industry. And the amount of press and coverage it has received has been actually quite amazing. And I just have to make note of the fact that CBRE has declared that for 2025, they've structured their business into four business segments, one of them being, get this, building operations and experience. And of course, the founder of Industrious will lead that effort. That is just a monumental indication to the market, to the industry as to where we are going. It shows a major commercial real estate player, not just giving lip service to this notion of experience, but putting it front and center, and making it part of what they call operational excellence. And I just, obviously for me, and given what I do all around creating great customer experience in buildings, it's just a wonderful moment in time. And, we're very excited and just thrilled to see what will continue to emerge as a result of this announcement and this new thrust for experience, again, to be right at the forefront of what we're doing.
I think it's a very exciting time. Go ahead, Ry.
It's a very exciting time, and I think if you're talking about prop tech and how we're this type of investment kind of accelerates the need for prop tech and AI and data analytics, and how that needs to now be incorporated into office buildings in order to create that operational excellence that you just brought up, David. And I think now is the time to get it off and running. For a lot of these operators to be able to attract and retain tenants.
100%. It is about creating a more desirable place to be. I'm not a fan of mandates. I'm not a fan of forced return to work. I am all about making buildings a magnet for talent, for great companies to do great work. So I think it's very interesting. And that connects beautifully your point about technology and AI. It connects to our next guest on the Tenant Experience Network podcast. Coming up, we had the opportunity to sit down with Glenn Way. He is the president of GWL Realty Advisors here in Canada, north of the border for you. GWL is an $18 billion company with over 54 million square feet under management. So in Canadian terms, that's mammoth, and American terms, a little bit smaller, but still big. We had an amazing conversation, and he introduced a couple of really interesting ideas, which I think will resonate with you as well. And he brought up this sort of question around, can buildings create both economic value and social value? Mm-hmm. We already know that commercial real estate is the largest asset class in the world, but mm-hmm. What is its potential to impact on a social level? So he shared a story that, they have rooftops in buildings. They sit generally idle. And just absorb the elements of the world. And what they did is they turned 18 of their rooftops into they planted vegetable gardens, flower gardens, herb gardens. And not only did they plant and then harvest the produce for local community partners, but they actually get their tenants involved in the process. So they get to come up and be a part of the growing process, the harvesting process, help determine where the output of those efforts are donated to, and really creating a beautiful social experiment. And I think that was an example of where he sees the industry moving to be really in tune with what's going on in neighborhoods, communities, and cities, and making sure that we're not just silos, but we're very much a part of those communities.
I think stories like that are just one very small example of why I believe we are living at one of the most exciting times in the history of our industry. Truly, we are living in a time and where the industry is recognizing our incredible potential to be a catalyst for extreme social change and social impact. And I feel very fortunate to be one small player in the industry at this time. And you do such a fabulous job on your podcast, David, of finding these stories and finding these folks in the industry, in addition to yourself, that are doing that. So I cannot wait for this next episode.
And what I loved about that episode, this came from the president. This is not sort of a bottom up. This is coming right from leadership, and yes. I think it's pretty cool. I asked him one final question. I asked him, if he had unlimited money, unlimited resources, what would he be thinking about today? And he said, listen, with unlimited time, resources, and capital, he really believes we're at an incredible point in time. To your point earlier, Ryan, around technology and AI, and how that can impact operations, and how we can continue to improve the way in which buildings perform, and just thinks, well, there is, been so much progress in prop tech. He thinks we're really at a critical moment in time, and to be able to double down and find those really unique opportunities and invest and partner, dramatic opportunity to really impact the industry. And then lastly, he brought up this notion of hospitality and feels that we need to continue to adopt more of a mindset around hospitality, and that has a huge potential to impact the business. And of course, I myself am a big fan of this notion of hospitality and commercial real estate, being an avid reader of Will Guidara and his book Unreasonable Hospitality, and his whole position that we are now living in a hospitality era, and that every business could benefit by being more hospitable. And we can look at ways to make commercial real estate, office buildings, more hospitable, one moment at a time. Not necessarily big investments in amenities, great when we can, but not all buildings can. But looking for those unique opportunities to be more hospitable. And I'm super excited about, that conversation. And again, I think you'll enjoy this episode a lot.
Well, we look forward to it so much, as always. David Abrams, thank you so much for stopping by, for giving us your insight, as always, and for the sneak peek into the next episode of the 10 Experience podcast episode. Thank you, David.
Thank you. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
See you next time. We are back from our break with David Abrams of HILO. Thank you, David, for your wonderful insights, as always. So, guys, I love chatting with David. He's always got his insight, what's going on, with experiences in offices. So let's talk about offices. I don't know what's up. I don't know if it's just me, but is there a lot of buzz with the return to work these days, especially like in the last 2 weeks? I mean, I know return to work and the future of work it's going to be here for a while, but I feel like there's been a lot of buzz these last 2 weeks. When started towards the end of 2024, most notably with Amazon announcing that effective January 2nd of this year, their workers are going back 5 days a week. It seems to be accelerating and picking up since then. You've got the leaked rant of Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan coming out about a week ago, where he's dropping F-bombs every which way, letting us know exactly how he feels about hybrid work. And then you've got Doge, Elon Musk, and the federal government saying that they're going to be getting rid of offices, not only getting rid of offices, but also mandating that those employees that do have the opportunity to stay have to come back to the office. So I don't know how that's going to play. So guys, I want to know, you guys think is this a real shift, or is this just CEO posturing? What's going on?
I think there's been a vibe shift. I think there's been a real vibe shift. It hasn't shown up in the numbers yet, but the thing that really hit me was I was on Twitter the other day, and I saw this viral post that was basically a rant that said, millennials, we ruined it for everybody. We had this generational opportunity to never have to go into the office again, to work from home forever, spend time with our families, not commute. And some of you had to go on TikTok and post videos of you sitting in the pool on your laptops, doing your bullshit product manager jobs, and now we're all going back. And we've lost that generational opportunity to never have to be in the office again. So and that struck me, and I think it struck a lot of people as there was a 5-year period of time where, it was kind of uncertain what would happen. And I think certainly the vibe has shifted in the direction of people are going back. And it's not even necessarily going to be 2 or 3 days a week hybrid, but it's going to be people are going back 4 days a week. People are going back 5 days a week. So it does feel, once again, hasn't shown up in the data yet, but it does feel like this is not just CEOs announcing things. There's a vibe shift out there. And I think the administration, Doge has something to do with it. It's 5 years after the pandemic. I think that's a piece of it too.
I don't necessarily.
Yeah. Rye, what do you think?
I don't necessarily think it's a vibe shift. I think you're just hearing a bunch of older CEOs just ranting about why they have to go to the office every day and why can't people come back. That's just my take. I've been to a few board meetings where I literally see people pounding on the table expressing that. But there was a study done by the University of Chicago, and they said that companies specifically tech companies that asked for did return to work mandates, caused a lot of senior managers to leave the companies and go work for their competitors. So it caused for working capital loss and then training costs to hire new senior managers to come back into their firms. So I think you got to be careful about, starting these type of mandates. I think I've said this from day one. I think hybrid work is here to stay. I don't see that going away. And you're seeing that with a lot of these companies such as RXR and Silverstein, creating spec spaces and also doing flexible workspaces. Plus CBRE, with their acquisition of Industrious, I think they're understanding that more companies like that flexibility. That's why you're seeing a lot of shorter term leases. Much of this made to lenders. So I don't necessarily think that it's a complete vibe check, but I do see the hybrid model like going in there strong. That's what I'm seeing out there.
I hope you're right, Ryan. I hope you're right. I love working from home. I mean, I think I'm in the solid core of that like 30 to 45 demographic that have the highest support for work from home. The young people that, I think they are missing out on a lot. The older folks obviously are used to the work culture. They're used to the office culture. Look behind me. This is not an office on, 44th and 3rd, 44th and 3rd behind me. I love working from home, but, we just hired a chief of staff at Thesis Driven. It's our first
Congratulations.
US based hire. She
Hey,
started
congrats.
on Monday. Thank you. And we are getting an office and we are working 5 days a week in an
Really?
office. Yeah.
Starting when?
Starting March 17th.
Happy St.
Wow.
Patrick's
We are
Day.
going
How do
back
you
to the
feel about
office.
that?
Oh, is that St. Patrick's Day? Oh man,
It
I don't
is.
know.
Yeah, man.
All right. Well, I guess we're going to go drinking that night.
I guess you are.
To celebrate return to office.
Team building activity. Yeah. Dub it a team building activity.
There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Brad, I would like to see if you feel that the collaboration would have been affected if you did go through, all of you working from home.
It's, I think that yes and no. We're a small company, obviously. I think small companies are going to benefit the most from working in an office and having that connectivity.
Yeah.
It's also for us, I don't know, by the way, how if you have an existing organization where everyone has scattered to the winds and has gotten accustomed to remote work, how you claw that back. That is beyond my pay grade. I don't know how you do that. It's going to be super thrashy. Mm-hmm. But if you're building a new organization from scratch, I believe it is an incredible signal to say we are building an in-person, in the office culture. And we are only hiring people that are willing to come into Manhattan and work in an office 5 days a week as a signal. That was the number one reason I did it, honestly. It was a signal for a certain type of person. I don't know. Ask me in a year, along with a reminder of, has Nadine learned to ski or not? Ask, how'd that office thing go, Brad?
Yeah.
We'll
record this. I'll have like a neck brace on this time next year. That'll answer your guys' question of if I learned to ski or not. I agree with Ryan. I think hybrid work is here to stay. That being said, I think we're in a bit of a holding pattern right now where we know that the old way we used to work is not going to fly anymore across the board the way it used to. That being said, we also just don't think we have the exact answer of what we're going to need going forward, right? And I think the words collaboration and community and productivity are being thrown around, and I also think that they're being diluted tremendously, right? I think what it's going to be, we just heard David Abrams on his segment, talk about, CBRE, and Ryan, you just mentioned it as well, CBRE's acquisition of Industrious, right? And they've got this new segment, building operation and experience and excellence. One segment is going to be focusing exclusively on what does it mean to have an excellent experience within their assets. I think we're going to see a growing number of forward-thinking organizations the ones that get it, and I think you guys do, Brad, that recognize that leadership is going to have to start thinking differently about what the word work means. What does that in-person culture look like? So the companies that are, first off, the word mandate, if you're using a word mandate, you're effed. I think you already missed the memo, right? You missed the memo. And so those that are mandating a return to work, that's going to be problematic. But those that are recognizing like, hey, the way that it used to be wasn't working. The way that it is now probably isn't the best solution either. So we're going to have to get curious to figure out something. I think we're going to be hearing a lot of those conversations going forward. And I'll be, to your point, to echo both of your points, I'll be very interested to see where we are in 1 year from now. I think this year is going to be very, very interesting on this topic. Very interesting.
Yeah, and I think with Jamie Dimon and other CEOs, they want to justify the use of office buildings, which is why they're requiring these mandates. I mean, a few blocks down from where I live, they're building a brand new office building. I mean, they have to justify why they're spending all these dollars into this development, which also goes hand in hand with, you're seeing a lot of Class A office being leased up in New York. That's not surprising. I mean, people are now focusing more on quality and the experience versus just having more space. At our company, we have Class B and Class C properties, and we're having trouble leasing them because we could do whatever we can for the operations to be at the highest level. But in these markets, prospective tenants and current tenants are looking just at the rent, and they're looking at location, and that's it. And there's a lot of other vacancies out there in other areas in the neighborhood, and they're just going to basically have landlords compete against one another to see who will go lowest with their rents and who will give more free rent and more TI. So that I don't see changing anytime soon. But Class A, I think they're in good shape. What do you think, Nadine?
Yeah, I would agree. I would absolutely agree. I mean, the Class A buildings right now, I mean, they're being built like resorts. You go into these lobbies, right? And I feel like I'm in the resort of this great hotel, which again is a testament to the fact that I think we're going to have to look across the aisle to other industries for inspiration, such as the hospitality industry, right? Places that design that take the desirability into mind when they're designing a space and not just mandate. I mean, so I would totally agree with you, and I hear that across the board. I mean, I've said this a number of times. I work for myself. I don't have an office, and it's not unusual for me to go sometimes work in the lobbies of some of the Class A office buildings in Boston or hotel lobbies or whatever that is for that very reason. I like the way they make me feel when I go into that. And David just mentioned that as well in his segment, right? We have to be taking into consideration how a space makes people feel. How does an employee feel when they go into the office, right? Do they feel, that they want to be there, that they want to do work? Do they feel productive? Are they thinking about all the things they could be getting done when they're at home, right? So very interesting conversation. And again, I can't wait to see where we are 12 months on this one. All right. Well, that is all the time we have today. A very special thank you once again to Brad Hargreaves, editor-in-chief and co-founder of Thesis Driven, for joining us on this collaboration series. Brad, thank you so much. Brad, hey, where can our listeners find you if they want to learn more about Thesis Driven?
Well, first, thanks for inviting me back. Always good to get an invite back. You can find me at brad@thesisdriven.com. Thesisdriven.com is our Substack and where we put all of our stuff. So all of our writing about the built world. So come find us there.
Yeah, a lot of great information there. I can't stress the need to visit that website enough. Thank you, Brad. And to all you listeners, please subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you get your podcasts.
Keep your conversations real and unplugged.